The courtroom was its usual self, calm, quiet, and expectant. The light from the late morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting soft beams over the wooden bench and the rows of seats. The worn but well-loved structure, with its classic oak details and muted colors, had an air of familiarity, a place where daily matters were resolved, large and small. The sound of footsteps echoed briefly as Ms. Harris, a woman with a simple air about her, stepped to the podium. She was dressed plainly, nothing about her attire that stood out. No flashy jewelry or expensive clothes, just a humble, modest appearance. She was in her early 40s, her shoulders slightly hunched, and she nervously adjusted her glasses before meeting the judge's eyes. She was the picture of an ordinary person in an extraordinary place. The air was thick with the usual unease of defendants, who knew their fate would soon be sealed in a few minutes. Judge Caprio looked up from his docket, offering a slight smile. His demeanor was calm, even as he sifted through the case files. This was another routine day in a long list of ordinary cases, it seemed. He nodded at her, gesturing for her to speak. "Ms. Harris," he said with his signature measured tone, "what brings you here today?" "Your Honor, I was caught in a no parking zone," she said softly, her voice trailing off as she adjusted the paperwork on the podium. Her nervous hands trembled slightly, betraying her calm exterior. Judge Caprio glanced down at the documents before him. "It looks like it's a minor violation," he said, shuffling the papers with a quiet rustle. "Just a simple parking infraction, nothing out of the ordinary," he continued, his eyes scanning the file. "It's a small fine, really, not a big deal." The courtroom hummed with the faint sounds of murmurs from the audience. Familiar, indifferent. "Do you have anything to add, Ms. Harris?" Judge Caprio asked, leaning back in his chair, his voice even but soft. She hesitated, biting her lip as she glanced down at the floor. "No, Your Honor. I know it was a mistake." The clerk prepared the fine in the background, and the usual routine was unfolding, almost like clockwork. But as the moment stretched, the atmosphere in the room seemed to hang suspended, as if there was something more beneath the surface of this seemingly minor case. Just then, Ms. Harris cleared her throat, her voice suddenly resolute. She opened her bag slowly, carefully pulling out a small wrapped package. It was a simple bundle, wrapped in plain brown paper and twine. Her hands shook slightly, but her eyes were clear as she lifted the package toward Judge Caprio. There's something else I need to explain, Your Honor," she said, her voice steady now but with an edge of emotion. "The parking spot, I didn't just park there by mistake. I had to. There was someone who needed help." Judge Caprio raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. He leaned forward slightly, watching her intently. Ms. Harris took a deep breath before continuing. "There was an elderly woman on the street. She had fallen, and I couldn't just leave her there. I stayed with her until the ambulance arrived, and—" She unfolded the bundle, revealing a small, hand-knitted blanket. "I made this blanket for her, to keep her warm while she waited." The courtroom fell into a hushed silence. Even the usual shuffle of paperwork seemed to pause in the air as everyone absorbed her words. Judge Caprio studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The room was still, save for the soft rustling of Ms. Harris shifting her weight. After a beat, Judge Caprio let out a small breath. His eyes softened and he leaned back in his chair, hands folding in front of him. He gave a warm yet surprised smile, his gaze now fully on Ms. Harris. "Ms. Harris," he began, his voice carrying a note of admiration. "I wasn't expecting that. I read the paperwork, and I saw a simple parking violation, nothing more. But what you've just shared—" He glanced at the blanket in her hands. "That was a different story entirely." He paused, reflecting on her actions. "You could have easily walked away, but you didn't. You saw someone in need, and you did what was right, not for reward, but because you cared. You even brought a gift of warmth for her." A slight pause hung in the air as Judge Caprio shifted his gaze to the clerk, who was now watching with a knowing smile. "I'm going to dismiss the fine, Ms. Harris. No charge." The courtroom let out a collective sigh, the audience visibly moved by the unexpected kindness in the air. Ms. Harris blinked, surprised. A tear welled up in her eye, but she quickly wiped it away. "Thank you, Your Honor," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. As Ms. Harris left the courtroom, her shoulders lighter than when she entered, Judge Caprio addressed the audience with a reflective tone. "Friends," he began, his voice low and sincere, "sometimes we forget how simple acts can make all the difference in the world. A small mistake, a parking ticket, could have just been another day in a long list of ordinary things. But then sometimes something more happens. Something that reminds us of the good in people, the kindness that keeps us all human." He leaned forward, his eyes sweeping the room. "It's easy to get caught up in the rush of life, but remember, even the smallest acts of care can change someone's day or their life. A little warmth goes a long way." With that, the gavel came down gently, signaling the end of the day's session. The doors of the courtroom opened with a soft creak, the hum of the world outside resuming, but for those who were there, something had shifted. There was kindness in the air, and it would linger long after the case was closed.